So, welcome to the new Doctoral Student Consortium, or NDSC, podcast. Today, I'm excited to welcome Ellen Shaffner, Assistant Professor in the Department of Communication Studies at Mount St. Vincent University in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Ellen is also the Student Representative at Large for the Management History Division of the Academy of Management. The Management History Division is one of NDSC's sponsors, and we're grateful for their support of doctoral students and early career scholars. The division is an interdisciplinary community for scholars interested in management and organizational history, including the emergence and evolution of management through management thought and practice, historical continuity and change, and the connections among history, time, memory, theory, and practice. Ellen's own research focuses on integrating intersectionality into historical studies of organizations, with additional interests in the history of management thought and education and organizational communication. Today, we'll talk about what the Management History Division does, why management history matters for doctoral students, and how early stage scholars can get involved at AOM and beyond with the division. Ellen, thank you so much for joining us today from Canada.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Kayla. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Great. Well, to start, would you mind briefly introducing yourself and your role within the Management History Division and how long you've been involved with the division?
Yeah, for sure. So as you said in that lovely introduction you gave, I work at Mount St. Vincent University, which is a small university located in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And I have been in my role there for almost 5 years, and I've been involved with the Management History Division for the year in sort of an executive capacity, serving as that student and early career member at large. So what that means is I kind of try to promote the interests of students, try to get more students involved, and also try to think about what our early career members are looking for from us as a division. So that's a little bit about me and my background, how long I've been involved with the division. I've been a member of the Academy since I think 2017 or 2018 when I was doing my PhD, and just continued to get involved from there.
Very good. I'm curious, where'd you get your PhD from?
Yeah, so my PhD is from St. Mary's University, which is also in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Very proud to be a graduate of St. Mary's and to have received my PhD from there. There's a number of people in our division who have similar backgrounds who went through the PhD program at St. Mary's. So really good kind of foundation there in history work, which I was really lucky to receive, and kind of sparked my interest in historical research as a result.
Fabulous. It sounds like if students are really interested in this, there's plenty of connections in a community where good research and scholarship can be supported as well. So to start out here now, getting into some of the details of management history, for doctoral students who may be unfamiliar with the division, how would you describe management history?
I mean,
that's a loaded question.
It is, yeah. Because there's a lot of different approaches. I'm sure like in many other divisions, although there's kind of like a shared understanding of some things, there's also a lot of different perspectives and ways to approach it, a lot of different methods to bring to the research that you do. But broadly speaking, like the papers and the research that, our members are working on and presenting and publishing is related to how historical contexts have impacted organizations in some way over time.
Okay.
We also have members who are more focused on the development of management thought, so how key ideas that have shaped our field have kind of grown and come into being by looking at the history of that idea, the history and evolution of that idea, and generally just trying to do work that engages with the past in some way, engages with things that have happened in organizations, in other types of sort of collectives. We have members who work more specifically on labor relations and unions, looking at how those have functioned over time. We have members working on sports related kind of history research, how sports teams have developed and grown over time, or ideas that are kind of related to management and sport. We have tons of different threads of research essentially, which is why it's kind of a really exciting division to be part of, because management history is really like anything that engages in some way with the past and how that has brought us to or influenced where we are today in terms of what we understand to be organizing, management, and some of those kind of key ideas that really impact our field.
Very good. Well said. And it sounds like not only is it its own area of research, but there's also many connections and perspectives that people or that students can have, researchers can have to other interests, such as sports you mentioned, and different perspectives, maybe groups and teams or organizational macro level, micro level perspectives. It sounds like there are many angles where other interests or areas of work can connect to management history to inform research questions. So very good perspective there. And I think you covered this a bit in your answer that you just had here. So, but to highlight it directly, why should early stage doctoral students be interested in management theory, even if they don't necessarily consider themselves as historians? I'm curious. So how would they get involved with that, and what's the motivation for it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, one of the things that is important to kind of think about for students who are working on their doctoral research, really for all of us in the academy to think about, is that we didn't just arrive here suddenly one day. There's a lot of context, a lot of different influences, a lot of different, actions and perspectives that have been involved in kind of bringing us to where we are today. Us as the academy, us as what we do in our work, and also in what we research and what we're looking to find out when we kind of are engaging in, the inquiry into why things in the sphere of management are the way they are. They didn't just become this way out of nothing. And so I think when students are starting to think about their kind of doctoral research, when they're starting to think about what questions they're interested in studying, what areas they're interested in looking at, the history of that area is always a really interesting place to start, in my opinion, because it's a bit of a cliche, but you can't understand, the current time or the future without looking to the past. So kind of bringing that perspective is and doing some research or, reading some articles and how their area of interest came into being, its history, what that background and context is that led it to being the way it is today. That's not only a really good way to become familiar with your topic, but it's also a really good way to find areas that have maybe been overlooked, maybe haven't been considered as much by scholars. It still gives them a good grounding, a good foundation of their topic, usually, from which to grow upon. So I always encourage people to get interested in history just for their own sake, but then we also find that a lot of students do find ways to take what they're working on, and even if it doesn't make it into their thesis or into their dissertation or into the key papers that they're publishing.
Sure. Very good. As a current doctorate student myself and incoming students, right? Our classes for the first 2 years, we're learning about the fundamentals. We're learning about the fundamental theories from, the 70s, 80s, and 90s, sometimes even earlier with some of our parent theories that we're still building on today. So in a way, like we even rely on management history in our teachings as students that bridge then future scholarship and what we do today.
And it's also really interesting. You never know like what you're going to find. So sometimes, if you're interested in an idea and you do go back to some of those foundational theories and actually read what was written, it can sometimes be really enlightening, really shocking that what you thought you knew about an idea or a concept actually wasn't the case. And we see that with some of the publications in our division.
Right. And I mean, if we look back to the past, and that would almost be integrating the past with the present, that almost seems like a more fundamental or theoretical contribution that's valuable. I'm interested in your work here. Your research brings intersectionality into historical studies of organizations. How did that research interest develop?
Yeah, so I think for me, I was working with my supervisor, Dr. Albert Mills, on work that was related to discrimination in organizations over time, how organizations had overlooked, people of different marginalized groups over organizations, the history of organizations. We had this really kind of interesting perspective coming from intersectionality, looking at how this these systems of oppression overlap and impact people in different ways because of the way that they overlap. And I was really interested in that idea, but I also was really interested in how that looked and what that was like in a more historical context, early mid 20th century. And so I was interested in that, and my doctoral research really looked at how to sort of create that theoretical framework for actually going into archives and trying to approach historical work using that intersectional perspective. I found it interesting that at that time there was not a lot of work happening in the intersectional space that was engaging with historiography, so how history is created and written. And so my thesis ultimately ended up focusing primarily on bringing those two spheres of literature together in ways that made sense, from my philosophical kind of positioning, but also made sense for both of those sides of that, the history side and the intersectional side. So really interesting to me.
I see that. I love to see the passion and interest, and
Yeah.
it's great to see that come together, those two sides, and how you made that work, because it can be challenging, right, to integrate two different literatures into a way that makes sense and is well received by ongoing conversations.
There's always more to be done, more publishing, more
Sure.
studies, more cases to kind of work on and get out there. But
Right. It sounds like it's a lot of longitudinal research, archival research, things like that. Does it have both quantitative and qualitative perspectives? Sure.
yeah, absolutely. So I can speak to that a little bit. I think traditionally people do think of history as being, in the management history space as being more qualitative. And certainly there is a lot of
Sure.
scope for qualitative researchers or archival methods that really lend themselves to more of that qualitative kind of approach. There's also the possibility of engaging in things like interviews to sort of understand from people's individual perspectives what happened in the past. But there's also room and scope for quantitative research. Now, of course, there's not going to be the kind of experimental research that might appeal to some
Sure.
people from that side, but there is a lot of data available from the past. Sometimes you have to hunt
Right.
it
Yeah.
down. Sometimes you have to go into archives and reproduce it. But
Some
there's
web scraping and share. Yeah.
exactly. I'm sure there's lots of innovative ways that people are approaching that I'm excited to hear about at the
Yes.
Academy this summer with kind of the
Great.
AI revolution.
Yes. Yes. The karma courses have started to introduce some of that, and the course was completely full. I remember, because everyone was interested in it. So starting to
Yeah,
kind of make its way into our training now. And it's certainly been
definitely.
discussed the last several years. So
I think what may be more difficult for people who tend to think about their work in more of a quantitative sphere is just having to engage with more of that context, So how did this data
right.
come about? What do we know about how it's been preserved, created? These are questions that we kind of have to deal with in management history that might be a bit
Sure.
more kind of given when we're dealing with more modern data or more recent data, I guess I should say. But definitely room for both quantitative and qualitative researchers, and lots of exciting pathways there, I think, on both sides to be explored.
Great. So it sounds like, again, a unique set of questions that can be addressed from both sides of methodological perspectives, and also a way to kind of complement how we currently think about things. You said it's more niche, it's more of a different orientation to things, but that can also help inform like the greater scholarship. And because having more information from different subfields within management really helps us feel better about our field as a whole and kind of the work that we're doing. So thank you for highlighting some of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so now moving on here. So since NDSC here, New Doctoral Student Consortium, focuses on early stage doctoral students, what does the Management History Division offer students and early career scholars, specifically at the conference and even beyond the conference and outside throughout the year? How can a student get involved?
Yeah, so first of all, we're really, really friendly and open to students. I would say that as a division, we're really supportive of students. I definitely felt that support, and I just want to encourage any student that might be interested, but they're not a member of the division, to feel comfortable to come see one of our
Sure.
sessions at the Academy. I'm going to try and be at as many as I can, so they can always look
Great.
for me as like a recognizable face in the room. More broadly speaking, in terms of kind of what we do for students throughout the year and the opportunities to get involved, because we are a bit of a smaller division, there's really a lot of possibility for people to take a kind of whatever role they feel is a good fit for them. It can be a great way to get a little bit of that service started on their CV early on
Sure.
in their doctoral career. We have opportunities, for example, for students who might want to volunteer with the division at the academy. We might have students take some pictures of sessions, for example, as a way to get involved and kind of contribute to the division in a small way.
Okay.
We also have an ambassador program. So if a student is really passionate about management history and really wants to kind of be a supporter of the division, spread the word about the work that we're doing in their region or at their university, we have the opportunity for people to apply to be ambassadors and kind of take part in spreading the word about how great management history is.
Sure.
We also have something we're really excited about that we've just introduced over the past year, which is a mentorship program. So,
Okay.
yeah,
This.
we have a really great set of senior scholars in our division. And I mean, senior scholars, not just in management history, but who have been involved with the division at the
Sure.
at the level of it, academy executives in many different ways. They're editors of journals. They are people who are senior scholars, well respected for good reasons, who are giving their time to students in our division to provide this one-on-one mentorship. So the mentorship program was so successful this year in terms of the demand that we've had to stop accepting new applications for the
Wow.
time being. But shortly after the academy, come the fall, we're hoping to reopen
Okay.
applications. Still, students apply to kind of receive a mentor. They give a little bit of detail about why they want the mentorship, what their research interests are, and then they are matched with a mentor. And they kind of are the expectation is that they meet regularly for approximately 1 year.
Okay.
And the senior scholar provides guidance, advice, of course, never replacing any kind of like academic role, but just giving them that
Of
another
course.
perspective from someone who's been there and has seen how students have succeeded in sort of the academy space over the years. So
A great
yeah,
opportunity to, yes, great opportunity to connect with senior scholarship in the space and build the network, right? Because as a student, that networking can be very valuable beyond just the work and publications that we do. It's the network that we build, the community that we have, so that when we're on the job market or looking for potential collaboration on research projects, we'll have people to reach out to and work with potentially. So you never know where that can lead. The power of
100%.
weak ties, right?
Yeah.
Some strong and weak ties. So,
Yeah. So just to add on to that, there's also this year, one of the things that we are doing at the Academy, instead of having kind of a senior scholar be a keynote speaker, a number of early career and student researchers have been invited to kind of have more of a keynote symposium about their research. So I think that as a division, we are really, really interested in hearing the voices of students and wanting to find ways to promote their perspectives and to really give them the opportunity to contribute and tell us about the research that they're doing. Additionally, also throughout the year, we have workshops. For example, this year we had a grant writing workshop that was really well attended. That's an online event. We had a workshop in collaboration. In short, we have events throughout the year, virtually typically, that students, if it's of interest to them, certainly do attend and can get a lot out of. So
awesome. Sounds like there's plenty of unique strengths and positives of being a smaller division, as you said, right? That more personalized attention and highlight and
definitely.
attention to students and their development versus the larger divisions, such as the OB division. While very great, engaging division, it sometimes is less able to give that specific attention to students consistently, like your division does. So that's something to consider when students are signing up for their divisions on their membership website, and selecting management history, kind of keeping that interest in mind as well as the development piece that you're speaking to.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Very good. And so, as you said, lots of ways to connect with the Management History Division. I believe there'll be a panelist and specific questions that you can ask or students can ask at the conference during our NDSC symposium on Friday, the first day of the event. So, if there's any more specific questions that students have or people that they would like to speak to, such as Ellen, please look out for that during our programming. I'll also put in the description below the AOM Connect page, right, where they can read about the AOM leadership and bylaws or the division bylaws and ways to connect with the mission statement and kind of the posts and news going on with the division. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The AOM
So
Connect. Mhm.
we're really excited to have our new website, courtesy of
Oh, yes,
AOM, up
yes.
and running. I love that they're doing a refresh of the websites and
It
the
does
look.
look great.
It really does. And we have some great resources on that website for students relating to those programs that I mentioned, the mentorship, ambassador program, and the volunteer program. And then also, of course, information on all of our executives and in terms of events that we might have throughout the year. That's a good place to find us. We also do have LinkedIn, and Pierre
Okay.
Luigi, our communications representative, does a great job in keeping us active on LinkedIn. So we'd always invite students to connect with us that way as well. I also will be at the
Perfect.
NDSC and
Yes.
definitely can connect with students there who might be interested. I would just encourage students who have a little bit of interest in history. A lot of us do, right? We're here, we're
Yeah.
in the academy because we're curious and we like to know why. And history has a lot of those answers for us, or it can kind of, foster that curiosity. And my perfect world is that everybody has management history as like their second division, no matter what their
Sure.
first, even if they don't
It's
think that
very
they're
complimentary. Yeah.
yeah, even if they don't think they're a historian first, there's lots of great things to get out of our division. And yeah, just really encourage people, students early in their career to come see what we're all about. We are also one of the oldest divisions. We are a
Okay.
founding division of the Academy of Management. We used to be division number one. So
Really?
just a little
There we
history
go.
fact for you.
Maybe we'll play some bingo at the NDSC, and the people who watch the podcast here or listen to the podcast will be able to
Yeah.
answer that. Lots of cool little facts and interesting things about how the division got to where it is today.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
exactly.
great history behind it. There we go. All right. Well, wonderful. Thank you for joining us so far. And just to wrap up here, I'm interested. What's one thing you wish you knew earlier in your PhD or early academic career that may be helpful for students? Kind of a
Mm.
different angle here.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's the kind of question you want to be asked because you do learn so many lessons when you're going through it yourself.
Yeah.
I think that I'm thinking about AOM and thinking about the experience of being a newer student trying to come to the academy. I would
Mm-hmm.
say just go to things. Like there is
Okay.
obviously you want to go to the sessions that are in your division. You want to kind of make the most of the network that you might be able to kind of grow while you're there. But the thing that I love most about the academy that I've really been able to take advantage of in the past few years as I've grown more confident
Mm-hmm.
in sort of my stage of where I'm at is that you can just walk into any room and hear what they have to say and really can spark ideas. It can spark creativity. And I definitely held myself back a little bit from doing that because, if you're not in OB and you walk into the OB division, it can, a
It could be a
session,
lot.
it can be a
Yeah.
lot. But just pushing yourself to realize that like the academy is a place that's so big, that's where you can
It
really
is.
explore. And even if you think you know exactly what you want to do, even if you think, no, I'm on a great path, I love my supervisor, I know exactly where this
Sure.
is going, it's always important to stay really open to the different threads that might be out there that you don't know yet, but you need them for the success of your
Mm.
thesis, for the success of your doctoral research. There are sessions that I went
Mm.
to at the academy that made me think so differently about my own research. And it's like, the kind of ideas that I was having at the time, it completely changed the trajectory of where I ended up going. And I didn't know or expect that that would happen, but just being able to be in a space where there's so many amazing thinkers and researchers creating and talking about this huge scope of work. It just, don't be afraid to be open to that, to walk into different rooms, go to things that interest you, and know that those things will probably find a way to work themselves into your own scholarship and be really rewarding at the end of it.
I remember my first time at AOM last year and not being sure of my research identity or what I wanted to do for my dissertation, things like that. And so I just kind of looked at the programming and I said, well, what looks remotely interesting to me and maybe something that I'm not too familiar with, that I want to go outside of my comfort zone a little bit and even start a conversation with somebody about what we're seeing. So oftentimes it just takes that little nudge of courage and a bit of curiosity, as you mentioned, and it can lead to valuable things down the line, whether that's for your research or the connections or network you want to build. So that's the best time to do it, right? When everyone's kind of in the same place every year.
Exactly.
Okay, great. And our last touch point here, so circling back to the Canadian perspective, if you're able to share any major points about what it's like to study in Canada, what's some helpful things if people are thinking about potentially studying there or working there one day?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of positives about the Canadian kind of academic experience. I would say that, first of all, one of the big differences is probably that we are usually unionized. So we usually have faculty unions that can be quite strong. And so that can be a positive. Oftentimes that means we have an agreement that really clearly lays out the steps that you need to get tenure and promotion, for example. You also have a support network of colleagues who can help make sure that your interests are protected. Sometimes you get protections around the amount of teaching you have to do in your first couple of years. So there's some positives logistically that way. I would say overall a little less competitive. You know, in universities that are more primarily teaching universities, there can be a lot of freedom in terms of the direction you take with your scholarship. Yeah, there's a lot of positives.
Right. So it's good to keep options open and see what's out there and see, gathering information as a doctoral student over the years, what could be a best fit, mutual for the school and the student. So
yeah, I would also just say that Canada is, you might think that like, well, you wouldn't have a chance, but because we are smaller, sometimes we don't have as many candidates for really niche areas, especially at some of those smaller schools. So that can be a way to kind of get your foot in the door, is what I would say.
Very good. Very good. Well, this has been a fabulous conversation. Ellen, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been helpful advice for doctoral students who may be thinking about management history, historical methods, interdisciplinary scholarship, or simply trying to find a way, welcoming intellectual community at AOM. We're grateful to the Management History Division for sponsoring NDSC and for supporting doctoral students and early career scholars. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Kayla. I look forward to meeting with new doctoral students at AOM.
Yes, we'll see you at the symposium, July 31st in Philadelphia. There we go.